BBC Radio 1.
It feels kind of right for you to be in the studio because I feel like you've been here for the last sort of 15 years. You've always texted in, you've always emailed, you've always been part of the radio show in a way.
It's wild. It's like, you know, just an American kid that loved radio, loved the idea of music and sharing music, but American radio is far different than British radio. So when I came across these shows ranging from everything that was on One Extra or Radio 1 to, you could just get online and search and find all these musical selectors. I was listening to your show early on, same time listening to Giles Peterson, but then I could go to Fabio and Groove Rider and find out about a whole music scene. It was like a library. And music-wise, I can definitely say that I'm a child of BBC music, curation and care.
You've been listening to my show pretty much since the beginning. I think that's how we met, was you reaching out in the early 2000s maybe.
100%. It was I was, since the dawn of my sort of creative career, have been partners with Kanye West in the whole operation surrounding the fashion side, music side, and very much my home team. And it was, as anyone knows who works in a studio with an artist, everyone comes in that atmosphere bringing their knowledge and what they know. And so early on, I was always hey, I have this reference point of UK music culture and in the various different forms of it. So I would be sort of bringing forth records that I heard played on these various radio stations. And then I remember we did a show at the O2 during, had to have been maybe Glow in the Dark tour era. And it's worlds collided. And I think that's how we formally met, maybe.
Yeah, definitely.
But I was a long time listener before, but it was kind of same scenes blending together. Yeah, when I grew up, Chicago is the backdrop. I was born in 1980, so of course I've missed a golden era, so to speak, but it's in the air, it's in the water, and the idea of electronic music that I was hearing on the radio would have an hour throwback of classic house tunes. And so I knew them just because that was in the atmosphere. But then as I got older, and of course I'm listening to the BBC, and I'm sort of, my friends are, at this point I'm a skate kid, so it's we're listening to rap and rock. But then as I got older and into DJing, of course you go to the record store, Gramophone Records in Chicago is what, is my hometown spot. But you just see different sections of different genres, and you couldn't help but sort of be oh, let me pick out a few records that I'm knowing that are on the radio, but I could buy into that. And so for me, it was about being a proper DJ, which is mixing different genres and presenting music in different contexts. So that's where the electronic side, and there's records that, as we're just freestyling here in the studio, playing back to back, when the record you played before reminded me of an era that sort of has coexisted in our current club culture of the kids and crew that I run around with from time to time in New York, the Ghetto Gothic crew. Venus X, Shane, Hood by Air, in the modern context, I would come to New York, they would be doing parties. Also the Fade to Mine crew out of LA. You fostered that on the radio, that put that on the map for me. But then when it's us booking a party, making a vibe in downtown New York or in LA, that sound was something that had a subculture around it. And out of that birthed Hood by Air, Pyrex. One of my first clothing lines is when we were getting our feet wet DJing again. So, and obviously this has connections to a niche culture that is true and alive and living that those kids, Venus, are fostering. So like I said, music is a conversation. It's sort of been the soundtrack to all these different things, and that's what interests me the most.
I mean, it must feel like sometimes it goes full circle. You know, you've got Ron Hardy, Frankie Knuckles, all these Chicago sort of like DJ legends. And then, you know, for you to kind of now be DJing with Honey Dijon and da-da-da-da, and, you know, everything that you're doing now, it must feel like a beautiful full circle sometimes. Yeah, and that's a good point. You know, like over Christmas break, Honey and I went to Gramophone, spent the afternoon, and usually, again, I see her in Ibiza or some, you know, playing Circo Loco, and like she's waving the flag of Chicago house music and doing it with an immense sense of pride that me in my own practice, I don't see that there's like, oh, I'm a fashion designer. People know me as a DJ of hip hop, and you know, I might not even be that close to the center of that subculture, but in actual conversation, Honey and I, there's an immense amount in common, and I like that those two worlds can collide behind the scenes and, you know, in front of the DJ booth. Kanye had an idea of sort of wanting to sort of go through the classic house and classic like electronic music of that time, and as a go-to, I was like, oh, we just got to call Benji, you know, like I think he might even be on the West Coast or something like that. And I think, was it we flew from LA to San Francisco and you happened to have been playing or something like that? Yeah, it was during the Watch the Throne tour. Yeah. And I remember you said, just fly to Vegas from London. It was like the middle of December. And the first meeting was like, I remember you were like, show starts at whatever time. And that was my first time seeing Watch the Throne. Straight off the plane. With like a pea coat and a scarf in a casino in the middle of like the MGM or whatever. And I remember sitting down, you know, and it is worth saying this. I remember, you know, going back to the design of shows and stuff. I remember you sat me down on this like sofa, which was obviously in some kind of like VIP cool area or whatever. And the stage just looked miles away. And I thought, wow, this is quite far away, the stage. And the first thing happens, obviously, is Jay walks right in front of you and up on the riser, you know. Yeah. I think I ended up seeing the Watch the Throne show. How many? Probably like 25 or 30 times. After that. Yeah, but that was the intro. And then the next day we went to LA. And I was supposed to come to the house to start, I don't know, playing through music or whatever, and you were like, okay, you called me and you were like, change your plan. We're flying to Chicago. No, we're flying to San Francisco. Exactly. You were like, change your plan, we're flying to San Francisco because we want to go and see the Fela. The Broadway show. And I was like, all right, okay, cool. You're like, but bring your laptop. We got a sound system on the plane. And then therein lies like this sort of collage of culture that makes me and my friends operate and tick, and shows the importance of something that, hey, when you were 17, you sort of built this knowledge base about music and you might not have known where it was going to take you, but being authentic in that same path helped us gain a knowledge about club music in the modern context from someone that we could see eye to eye that didn't do it in a condescending way. It was like, these are the classic records. So, you know, just as we're randomly weaving through both of our USB sticks, like us finding this zone became, you know, fade. Your love is fade, I feel it. Roll up, hold up, pull up. Yeah. And became the way that hip hop in our context was like pushing towards electronic music back and making a full circle back to Chicago groove and house music. And that is it was like one conversation. Yeah. And that's what I enjoy being on the radio, only for giving a sort of view behind the curtain that the kid that I was when I was 17 didn't know how to participate. Yeah. And it's really that, like, conversing and sharing, like, this is an important musical reference and groove. Like, obviously hip hop, we can sample anything. But when we got to here, you know, even when I DJ Fade today, it's a record that works in so many different clubs, so many cross disciplines, and people sometimes like gasp and then they enjoy music, and those records are very sort of important for the toolbox.
I just believe, there's not even another way to sort of put it. I believe that there's barriers, and I believe that they're there to be stepped over. Mm-hmm. And when it comes to music and DJing, as we all know, since the time that we, first mixed 2 records together, like DJing is battling you personally all the time.
Yeah.
It's the mood, the right song, the free mind to sort of stitch it all together. And there's this reality. It's almost like skateboarding and a handrail and 12 stairs. Like, no matter what you think, there's a reality to it. And why I've enjoyed DJing now, or sort of like pulling the needle along to like different spaces and trying to exist in different zones, is that unless we do that, each of us individually or us as a collective, then we're actually making the new icons, or we're making the new sort of prototype for what DJing actually is.
Yeah.
And that's the exciting part. That's still to be defined. And I look at it the same way as fashion or anything else. And so, like these rhythms here. I was a kid while the whole, Boy in the Corner comes out. I'm in America hoping that, Dizzy was supposed to tour, and I was going to see him play at Subterranean in Chicago. And I remember distinctly hoping that Grime made it across the ocean. Simultaneously, all that I'd ever heard from the UK crossing over was like Dame Dash and Jay-Z being in the UK. I was like, look at this cross-pollination about to happen. And then ultimately, like the scene sort of like settled down, and Grime, took on its shape that it did. But fast forward to the fashion circuit, where all of us sort of reside in, as well as what we do individually, playing a Pigalle party in Paris with Manta Ray. I'm DJing, like in my box I have like a bunch of like songs that are UK influenced, Grime, Manta Ray too. So we're just kind of like in our own world, like kind of having a back-to-back, like shock that each of us know these records, and kind of looking at it. Someone taps me on the shoulder, and it's like, Skepta's here.
Yeah.
And he's in the back of the club, not trying to like be close or participate, but he's here. And I was like immediately in my catalog of Boy Better Know, JME. And the thing that you have to know is like, I was into that scene like it was my own. Boy Better Know t-shirts.
Yeah.
Me always believing in the graphic t-shirt, the importance of a t-shirt, knowing what that was, but then practice hours, from before, and just knowing that that wasn't my culture, but it was something that I was following.
Yeah.
And then ultimately Skepta in the club, and we're sort of having this sort of like handshake and kudos and props to you, which ultimately, inspired a friendship and inspired sort of working together in sort of like social circles. His crew Lash is now one of the faces of Louis Vuitton. Yeah. All off this sort of like moment appreciation of the talent and the subculture, the music, and DJing being at the center. As someone who doesn't see the line between music and fashion, I'm all about cross-pollinizing. We can even get into that when we talk about the work that we're doing together at Louis Vuitton. But as we talk about Grime and the evolution of that and the style that is, to me, it's at the forefront of what's happening. And this is coming from, an American fan of rap. But I've loved how those worlds have gotten closer. Yeah. And each has their own identity, gigs to 6-7 to like Slow Tie, remind me of any sort of new artist that was bringing about a new point of view and had his own aesthetic.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, for me, when Konnichiwa came out, one of the things I loved about it the most was the fact that it didn't have to, Skepta's never going to compromise anything. Obviously, we know that. But, I've seen music from the UK have to kind of like shift and change in order to make it into popular consciousness. Do you know what I mean? But Konnichiwa came out and it was a straight up grime record, which, felt good to me. And I love the fact that, you were able to embrace it in the way that you did around the time of All Day, and remember the Brits performance and all that. Wow.
all day, all day.
When it comes to self-expression, especially in a creative atmosphere, those things that hold you back from sort of executing on your dream are myths.
It's in here, right?
It's in your head. There's actually no consequence. And that's, it took me that sort of period to like question myself and be like, am I going to believe in the myth that I can't be a designer on the highest level? Am I going to believe that I'm supposed to make printed t-shirts that are called streetwear? Or am I supposed to believe that I'm only going to DJ clubs that are willing to pay me whatever and to play whenever? And I was like, yeah, I'm going to do that. And I'm going to keep doing it for a long period of time till the one opportunity that comes across, say yes or no. And I'm going to say yes. I'm going to show up on time. I'm going to do my best. And then that's going to lead to some other opportunities. And I hope that through my narrative, people see that in themselves, that anything is achievable and there's different genres are just made to be jumped over.